Good evening, everyone. My name is Karina DeRoche, and I am the GA for the Department of Intercultural Affairs, working with Ladonia Cultural Rights Center. So, welcome back for Workshop 2. This workshop will be focused and centered on study skills. I have a few videos that will go over a checklist and then some big major tips that I have for anyone interested in learning more about study tips and skills. So while I show my presentation, I will be stopping my video, but this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. That way you can always refer back to it, share it with friends, and anything else you find helpful. So let's get into, all right. So again, as I mentioned, this is our second workshop, a little kind of follow up from the first workshop, College Now What? Today is Wednesday, September the 16th. So, as a basis of our agenda and what we'll be covering, we'll go over how good study skills begin. I'll also show you guys a checklist that you can utilize on your own. I'll talk about two different methods of studying. I'll provide you with some top study tips, and then we'll end off with some available campus and online resources that may be helpful for you. So, when I'm first thinking of studying, I would love to just get an idea about what each one of you guys consider to be your good study habits. I know sometimes procrastination for me hits me like a ton of bricks, so it's hard for me to remain focused on one specific task. But throughout my research, I found that good studying begins with one, active reading and rereading of chapters. So, you don't want to just read something once and assume that you know everything. Doing consistent reading or rereading of chapters will allow for your memory to kind of get that down set. It also allows for you to refer back to things that you maybe missed the first time after reading. Good studying also begins with note taking abilities. So, how well do you note take? Do you physically handwrite notes or do you take notes on your computer? But it can also begin with test prep too. As you can see in the visual, those are some other good studying tips as well, or how studying should begin. So obviously with motivation, managing your stress, listening, time management, organization, and then self-knowledge of what you know is best for yourself. So I found this online interactive tool, which is a study skills checklist. Really quickly, the purpose of the inventory is to help you find about your own study habits and attitudes. So, what it asks you to do is read each statement and consider how it may apply to you. If it does apply, you would check yes, and if it does not, you would apply no. So, taking you to that site so you can get a better idea about what that looks like. So, this checklist asks a series of 21 questions. And what I'll do is I'll use my own information that way about what it should look like for you. So, to the first question, I spend too much time studying for what I'm learning. I would say yes. I usually spend hours cramming the night before an exam. To that, I would say no. Also, it's actually noted that cramming the night before an exam doesn't help you memorize anything better than you would have the previous day. So I always say, do your best not to cram. Take your time, make a schedule. That way you can focus on certain things and then leave. Question three. If I spend as much time on my social activities as I want to, I don't have enough time left to study. Or when I study enough, I don't have time for social life. To that, I would say no. Four. I usually try to study with the radio and TV turned on. To that, I would answer yes. I typically operate with my music playing, whether that be at work, um, working out, studying. I always have music going in my background, but that's just me. For question 5, I can sit and study for long periods of time without becoming tired or distracted. Absolutely not. I go to class, but I usually doodle, daydream, or fall asleep. I would say no. My classes are sometimes difficult to understand later, or my class notes are sometimes difficult to understand later. I would say no. And the only reason I would say no to this is because I make sure that I'm pretty organized on how I set up my notes. So when we get down later into different note taking methods, you'll obviously want to pay attention and choose which one is best for you. Question 8, I usually seem to get the wrong material in my class notes. I think that would be no, and I hope that would be no for a lot of you guys, seeing as everything is being offered virtually, but also hope in hopes that your professors are uploading, you know, PowerPoints and class materials that's covered. 9, I don't review my class notes periodically throughout the semester in preparation for tests. So I would say no. Me personally, I try to read my class notes after the following day after the class and then the day before the class. That way I can just get a general idea about what was covered. 10. What I get when I get to the end of the chapter, I can't remember what I've read. And I will say no to that. Just moving really quickly through so that you guys don't feel like you have to watch the entire thing. 11, I don't know how to pick out what is important in the text. No. I can keep up with my reading assignments, then I have to cram the night before a test. I can't keep up. No. I lose a lot of points on my essay test, even if I know the material well. No. I study enough for my test, but when I get there, my mind. I would say yes to that. Sometimes that could just be nervous jitters, but depends on the person. I often study in haphazard, disorganized way under threat of the next test. No. I often find myself getting lost in the details of reading and having trouble identifying the main ideas. No. I rarely change my reading speed in response to the difficulty level of the selection or familiarity with the content. No. I often wish I could read faster. No. When my teachers assign papers, I feel so overwhelmed that I can't even start. Well, I can't get started. No. I usually write my papers the night before they're due. No. I would recommend nobody do that. It seems to organize my thoughts, and I can't seem to organize my thoughts into a paper. That makes sense. No. So what you'd have to do is you would count up the number of yeses for each category, and these are the categories that they have it in. So time scheduling, concentration, listening and note taking, reading, exams, reading and writing skills. So a lot of those I had um, no's, but based on my most yeses in one category, it would have been concentration. So this is a resource that you are more than welcome to do on your own. You can also like reset the form. You can also print the form, but this will give you an idea about where you should be focused on, what categories you should be focused on in order to become um, a better studier. So, two different methods of studying that I want to touch on are the individual and then collaborative. So, obviously, individual means that you're studying on your own. You aren't in a place with someone else, but you're literally in control of major decisions like where to study, how long to study, what classes you'll be studying for, will you take breaks. Individual studying is obviously everyone's most go-to, but that can also kind of lead to procrastination, especially if you are responsible for keeping up with yourself. So I always try to mention, the collaborative method of studying, and that could be similar to like a group study. But this allows for new perspectives to be brought about. So you guys can discuss, notes over class, or your classmate might have an idea that you may have not thought of. So, having an idea or having a collaborative studying session allows for you guys to share ideas. It also kind of reduces the amount of material that's covered in a time. So, for example, if you're doing a collaborative study with maybe four different people, you guys can split the material into four different sections, and then the student will provide what they went through, and then you guys will just go over it like that. So, not one person is doing each section, but you have one person dedicated to one section and then reviewing it for the entire group. That's always helpful as well. So, again, as I mentioned, I know everybody's classes are now being offered virtually, and that can be a major change for everyone, but also just a major delay. So, I wanted to provide some tips for distant education. So, always paying attention to, what's the course format. So, they have synchronous and then asynchronous schedules. So, I know right now for my graduate classes, we operate on an asynchronous schedule. So, all of the material is uploaded, but it's up to us. How to finish, or it's up to us to decide how we would like to go about doing our work throughout the week as long as we make deadlines. Or you could have a synchronous class that's happening in real time. So, for example, I know one of our student leads, she has a class every Wednesday from 2 to 3. So, making sure that you're abreast on what kind of format your class is being taught in. Also, just making sure that you're not procrastinating, because you're not sitting in front of a teacher, you don't have one, have someone making sure that you're coming to class, checking attendance, making sure that you're paying attention in class. It's easier for you to fall off. So, online classes require you to be way more independent than usual. And I also mentioned dressing out if that helps. When I was working full time, but working from home, I started off um, just working in my pajamas, and that wasn't really helpful. But when I started to change, at least my top half, that made me feel like I was actually in the groove of work, and it allowed me to flow a little bit more effortlessly throughout the day. Also, one last tip is just make sure that you're remaining accountable. Again, you're independent. You are essentially your own gatekeeper. Um, Obviously, you should be attending the classes, but make sure you establish a routine or a schedule that works for you. You could also use supportive tools like screen time limits, or Freedom, or App Block. Those are two apps that you can find on your app store, depending on if you have an iPhone or an Android. Um, but I use screen time a lot, especially for my social media. So I try to limit my social media usage to 30 minutes a day. So whenever I hit that 30 minutes throughout the day, I'm required to like get off social media altogether. That's also helpful. You could also use website website block up pop-ups or block-ups, and that kind of just keeps you from navigating outside of your web page. So you're focused and you're tied to whatever you're working on currently. So um, hopefully everybody would have had a chance to go through the checklist and figure out which category they need the most help in. So I wanted to add this video as to how to change your study habits. So that was a really, I found to be helpful video, especially when it came to the Pomodoro method, that we'll discuss a little bit later. So a few note-taking methods that you can, what? Oh, there we go. I apologize. A few note-taking methods that I wanted to go over was the Cornell method. Um, and the Cornell method's ideals are to record, reduce, recite, reflect, and review. So if you are familiar with Cornell methods, and this could take you back to maybe elementary or high school, you would start off by dividing your loose leaf paper, or whatever you're writing on, into four sections. So you'll have one line near the column, and that should be like the smallest section as far as width, and that's where you'll put your main information, your main topics. The top section will be maybe something that lets you know what these notes are for. So, what class, what subject, when the class is taught, whatever you find useful for knowing what you're actually working on. The middle section is going to be where you take majority of your notes, and then the bottom section is going to be for you to review. And I'll show you a picture of that after this slide. Another method is the mind mapping, and that's where it's structured and organized large amounts of information to make it more easily absorbable. So you would start off with a hot topic. So, for example, if I'm studying for English, English would be my first word that I'm writing, and I'm drawing a bubble around it. Now, depending on what we're being taught in English, I would move from there. I would draw a line out, and maybe this week we're discussing verbs. So the next thing that I would draw is verbs, and then you'll keep drawing out from there. So it also provides you a really nice visual and makes it easier for you to memorize, especially during test days. Another method would be an outline method, and that's where you organize information into main topics, similar to mind mapping, but it has supporting details separated by indentions. And this is my go to method, especially for grad school. It just makes it easier for me to get exactly where I need to be based off what information is being provided, but also refer back to, and also easier to reread because it's organized into those main topics and subtopics. So if I was worried about public budgeting and finance, I'd go directly to that section rather than scrolling through all of that. So to give you a visual of kind of what it looks like, this one right here is the mind mapping. So for example, this English class is talking about classic literature. I apologize. So they go into authors. So for example, this is your main topic. Then your subtopic is Charles Dickens, and then you'll maybe start talking about some of the books that he wrote, like The Tale of Two Cities or Oliver's Twist. Similar for Shakespeare, you draw his own line because he's his own author. So as you can see, they kind of line up with the exact same thing. So you have the main bubbles of topics and then the general notes that are provided on the outskirts. This is an example of the outline method, which I love the most. As you can see, it's very neat and easy, and you can see the differences of what notes are being taken by the indentation. So similar to mind mapping, your main topic will be up here, and then you'll indent into your notes and so forth. I don't typically use numbers, but I use more of a bullet, but that makes it easier for me taking notes, especially in class. And then the last one that we covered was the Cornell method. So again, you're having this drawn into four sections. So this would be the first one, two, three. So this is your the name for your notes. So obviously chemistry notes, so you know what you're studying on. These are your topics that you'll be covering, and this is going to be on your left-hand column, the smallest column, closest to the hole punches, and then your general section right here will be your main notes, and that's where you whatever you found useful based off the topic. The bottom portion is really for your summary. So you would summarize lecture, we'll summarize your lecture after class. Big points, high points, mention the good beef material, especially if your professor likes to say, remember this for future reference. I would always put that in the summary or just a general idea about what was covered in class. So I'm going to show you a video of actual Cornell method note taking really quickly so that you can get a better idea just in case you weren't able to fully understand from my little excerpt. So I thought that was a really nice video that you could always refer back to in regards to the Cornell method. I do like that he mentioned strictly when writing, if you're going to abbreviate, make sure that you remember what your abbreviations are. But also make sure that you're not sitting trying to type everything or write everything the professor discussed. You always want to just do your main points and highlights. Um, Again, as he talked about with the summary, that is what you want to sum up within 1 to 2 sentences. What exactly did the class cover? What are your main points? What are your hot topics? Um, yeah, so that was with Cornell. So, a few tips to improving reading comprehension because it does speak to, especially with if you're tasked with reading chapters for your classes, and that could probably be the most hardest thing to do because it's least wanted to. So, I always suggest, or I always try to read the summary and introduction paragraph, but after my research, they've given me these three tips that I wanted to provide with you guys. So, doing a pre-reading survey. And a pre-reading survey pretty much is you looking over the chapter titles, subtitles, and subheadings. Looking at that introductory first and last paragraph to give you an idea about what will be covered in the chapter. Um, but also look really quickly at the visual aids. So if they have graphs or pictures or charts or lists provided in the chapter, pay attention to those. After you've done your pre-reading survey, you pretty much are ready to begin reading the actual text. I now just started reading out loud. I found that to be easier, one, because it makes me feel as though I'm retaining the information, but research shows that reading out loud allows you to have a little bit more ability in concentrating, but also memorization as well. Throughout your reading, while you're actually going through the text and reading chapters, take notes or highlight important concepts. I know sometimes it can be hard for individuals who are just unsure about what to highlight, but if you think it might be valuable or if you think it's a main point, I would recommend highlighting it. You could always go, you can never go wrong with too many notes, but also just make sure that whatever you're taking notes on and highlighting are important concepts. So after you've actually done the pre-reading, you've read the chapter, you've read the text, now you want to end off on your post-read review. So using the Cornell method, this can make it a lot easier for someone. So you just want to go over what you identified. For example, if you're using the Cornell method, you're pretty much just getting an idea from that summary that you typed up. You can also review your notes and highlights again. That just allows you to feel as though you're actually able to comprehend the material that was just covered. And sometimes that can be hard. But if you want to break it down into three steps, so again, the pre read survey, actual reading of the text, and then the post read review, it should at least boost a little bit of your reading comprehension and make it a little bit easier for you to begin, start, and end. So, and this is just my kind of personal notes that I wanted to add in there, but some of the top study skills that have helped me is one, taking notes. So, as I mentioned, research has shown that notes are proven to improve memory. Um, the particular research article I saw mentioned that handwritten notes are more better for you, or even writing on flashcards. So if you have the ability, or if you prefer to write notes handwritten, that would be ideal. But even not, if not, maybe writing those notes or using Google Docs to write your notes and then reading them out loud afterwards, that could also be considered a top study skill. Two, forming a study group. And again, study groups reduce procrastination and offers outside perspectives of the material to be covered. So similar to the collaborative method of studying, um, having individuals, whether that be in your class or program, who have gone through the same material or in the same material to go over things and discuss it with one another is always helpful. I know now that I'm in the graduate program, I am very close with my classmates just because we're always leaning on each other. We're always asking for an idea or perspective, or did you get this material? Did you cover that? So forming a study group can always be helpful for that. And referring back to the collaborative method, it also reduces what information you're studying. So maybe the example I gave earlier was splitting it up between four people, having each person take notes and then provide those notes as a summary to everyone else. That way, all of you guys are not responsible for going over each individual material. Another top three study skill would be studying gradually. So, like the video, the TED Talk mentioned, the Pomodoro cycle. So, depending on how long you think it's going to be for you to retain that material, you want to section it off by then. So, I would just say start off general. Maybe study for 25 minutes. Give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to rest, get water, use the bathroom, a minor walk, and then flow back into your 25-minute study session. And really stick hard to those studies, those schedules. So when you're doing your 25 minutes, again, use screen time or use app or Freedom or any other apps that may app block that keeps you from using your website. But also, it's also recommended that you don't want to overstudy, or don't overload yourself and thinking that you have to know all this material. So I always say it's recommended to study at least 1 to 2 hours, or if you're feeling confident, 3 hours per day. And then the fourth top study skill is learning shortcuts. And this just makes me think about how my mom would be like, if you knew that material like you knew a song, it would work better. So you could use neurotic devices. So you can use an acronym or a rhythm or a visual. So, for example, I know everybody knows PEMDAS, which is Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. That makes it easier for you to remember information through a mnemonic device. So that's always recommended to use, especially if you're in the healthcare field. So really quickly, I did want to share a few online resources that you guys can use, and I'll go to a few of these. So for like time management, and I've included the links into this PowerPoint, you can actually go and see your own tips on how to manage your time wisely. You could also see information about making a schedule. Um, you can see tips for setting that schedule and staying to it, but also idea for planners and online. So I found this tool to be especially extremely helpful because they had in a video on time management, which I won't play per se, but again, I just wanted to show you that link. Another resource that I provided online is note taking skills. Um, so it kind of goes over some of the things that we covered within here. So the Cornell note taking method, visual note taking, how can visual note taking be used in class? So just good resources on note taking skills and how to improve those. Again, link is provided in the PowerPoint. And then the last one that I added was study strategies. And this is very helpful because it provides you not only institutional resources, so from actual colleges, but just basic online resources that you can use. So, how to get rid of bad habits, effectivestudying.org, or strategies and techniques for improving your memory. But you have access to all these resources. I mean, again, this can kind of be looked up on Google and used for your own reference, but I wanted to include these into this PowerPoint for your visual as well. And if you had the opportunity of attending the very first workshop, which is College Now What, we pretty much covered a lot of the campus resources that are available to you. I had a pleasure of having PACS, so Pirate Academic Success Center, talk about some of the services that they're offering this fall semester. Again, right now they're offering their services virtually, but you can always reach out to them to see what study groups are available. Or if you need assistance with study skills, you can always reach out for them for appointments. But they do have certain courses that they're working on and finding documents for. So if you're enrolled in any of these courses, you can use that as well. I also wanted to include the communication center, so the speech center that's here on campus. So if you are having an upcoming presentation, or if you just want to do better with your public speaking skills, this is also a really good resource that is free and available to students as well. So they'll help you organize and deliver, but also practice that with you. So that is all for me. I hope you found this workshop to be helpful and useful to you. Um, we will have another workshop taking place in October, and that one will be focused on researching skills, and that one will to take place on October 15th, same time. You guys can find more about that information on Engage, but I look forward to seeing everyone there. If you ever have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me directly at my email, which is deroche, DEROCHE, 14 at students.ecu.edu, or you can always stop by the Ladonia Wright Cultural Center office during my office hours and ask for any assistance. Hope you guys have a good one.